Okay, Chris, we're back at it. Mm-hmm. How you been?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. New digs?
I know. This is nice.
Same, but new.
A lot of room. We could dance. We could
That's
take a nap on your couch.
That's the first suggestion I've had so far was, we have room to dance now.
There you go. We could do like a disco show.
We could. We could also do slam dancing. That was a thing, right? Slam dancing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Now, did you ever do that?
No.
Would you admit it to me if you actually ever did?
Oh, of course. No, I've never done anything like that. I find it fascinating. Back when I worked at Double X, there were people that would do that type of thing. Or when you get like the mosh pit that goes circular, like almost like a
what is that called?
I don't know. I just find it fascinating to watch it.
Have you been in a mosh pit before?
I have been in a mosh pit.
Okay, so I have not done that.
And quickly got out.
Got hammered? Oh, you got all right. Which show was you got to tell me the show?
Who was that? It was like, I think Live was a part of that, the band Live.
Yeah, I remember them.
But I value my dental work. I've never had a cavity in my life, and I'm just very cautious about my teeth. Yes, knock on wood, for sure.
I never had the courage to, but I got a cool mosh pit story. I watched Keanu Reeves get in a mosh pit.
Wow.
I was that picture of Scotty in over there. We presented him a guitar. It was the House of Blues, Chicago, in the March of 2005.
Oh, wow.
We're there just doing our thing.
He doesn't seem like a mosher to me.
I didn't think so either.
He's more of like...
My wife at the time was so enamored that she was standing next to him. It was something. But then we got our seats up on a balcony, and then we looked down, and there's like Keanu Reeves taking his jacket off, and he went at it. Like full bore.
Wow.
And at the time, it was the third movie had just kind of come out, so everybody was saying, "Oh, Neo's in the mosh pit, the Matrix."
Oh, Matrix, yeah.
Yeah, so that's my only. But I wasn't brave enough, and after watching it from above like that, I was like, "Ooh, that's brutal."
Yeah, if I was younger, yeah, of course, but yeah, it's a little dangerous.
No doubt. So today we're going to tackle the year that was in rock, 1984.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff came out in '84.
It did, and would you not say also that MTV was kind of hitting its stride then after a couple of years of being in existence at that point?
Yeah, I think so. As far as more bands coming out with creative videos, not just performance videos or stupid things with, guys wearing a lot of blush and lipstick that you knew they didn't feel comfortable doing just to make them look, obviously technology has come a long way in videos and things. And, I think 84. Yeah, I would think that there was a lot of, it was kind of like where in 84, the stride of alternative music really started to pop its head up.
Really? That early?
I think so, yeah. I mean, you had a lot of different bands. Echo and the Bunnymen came out with Ocean Rain that year. Mm-hmm. The Smiths came out with the Smiths that year. Mm-hmm. Depeche Mode came out with their album that year, REM, The Reckoning.
Oh, REM.
So, it's just, I mean, do you call REM alternative? Yeah, I think so, because they were a college music.
College rock.
College rock.
Before it was alternative.
Sure,
right?
and Depeche Mode to me was college rock. I mean, when I was in college, many, many moons ago, U2 was considered a Christian band. I think we've had this discussion before.
Yeah,
The Unforgettable Fire came out in 1984.
For sure.
1984 from Van Halen came out in
Yes, no, they were not alternative.
No. But there were a lot of cool bands that were starting to get some recognition in those days.
But 84 probably was the height of the and not maybe androgynous kind of thing on video.
Sure.
Men with lipstick and spandex. I think of Billy Squier being the biggest casualty of 84 because he had a nice little run and that album was so good. But that damn video for Rock Me Tonight.
That's terrible.
It is terrible.
That is.
But
that is a
that's
shame.
What happened,
it really is. I mean, he is a fabulous songwriter. Writes a great hook. He's great live. Seen him multiple times.
100%.
But for that to like railroad his whole entire career, is it us?
I think.
Do we have problems with things? Did we have problems with men shaving their armpits in 1984?
Well, the funny part about it is I don't think so, but it makes me wonder if someone in the industry had it out for him and created the narrative maybe because that stuff was happening with other bands that seemed to make it. I mean, Bon Jovi was
Boy
doing
George.
Exactly right.
I mean, he was androgynous and, Bon Jovi and...
but why was it not permissible for Billy Squier?
I don't know. And it's sad because, there is a guy I would love to see write some new music. I mean, I listen to him all the time. I just love his stuff. Love his stuff.
So if you look back at that year, obviously the big one was Van Halen, right? I mean,
Sure.
it even had 1984 as the title.
Right.
And you can see by these goofy lists we have, numerous songs from that album seem to be in there. Mm-hmm. Was that the hit?
Oh, there were lots more, Eric. Let me tell you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Let me tell you a little story about Cris Winter.
Okay.
I graduated from college in 1984. And between working in radio, college radio, and working in professional radio and getting a real job, I worked at National Rec Mart at Century 3 from like May of 84 till December, January of 85.
Okay.
That year, that summer, Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA came out. Eddie and the Cruiser soundtrack. Remember that?
Couldn't get that song out of my head.
Right. We couldn't keep that album.
The Dark Side or something, right? Name of
Could not keep that album in stock. As soon as we had 20 copies, boom, they were gone.
Really?
Let's see what else. You had Madonna's Like a Virgin. Mm-hmm. Prince, Purple Rain, which was by far off the charts. Yeah. Off the charts. You couldn't keep that in.
And the movie came out that year as well.
Correct. And then we had this little plastic thing that had like felt on it, and you spun it around and it had pins on it. It was all Prince and Springsteen and I think New Kids on the Block or somebody, a boy band at that time. And people were just going bananas over it.
Well, why is Prince not often included in the conversation when you talk about rock?
He should be.
Certainly.
Probably one of the best guitar players I've seen.
Arguably the best.
Yeah. I mean, very diverse, wrote all of his own stuff.
Effortless.
You know, the first album he wrote everything, played every instrument on it, Want to Be Your Lover, that song.
Mm-hmm. 78 for the For You album.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, why he isn't in the conversation, I think he is now that he's not with us anymore, and more people realize and have seen the video of him doing While My Guitar Gently Weeps. I think maybe that kind of sparked more people thinking like, well, wow, what did I miss from this guy? But listen to the beginning of Dove's Cry. He's fabulous. He's fabulous.
And the song Let's Go Crazy.
Sure.
It was pretty obvious from the get-go that he was playing from another stratosphere.
Right.
And he did it so effortlessly. Right. As a guitar player, you'd watch him play. It's like he's not even interested. Once in a while, he's really into it, but he's doing all this complex stuff in his mind over here, looking around. Like
right. And on top of that, he's doing, I saw him live, I forget what year that was at the arena, and he's doing splits and things like that
with those
with
heels.
the guitar, and I'm like, holy smokes, this guy's amazing.
That's why I thought he was superior to Michael Jackson. You take away how popular the songs were, but the dancing with the heels and playing the guitar and everything he did, different, but I think harder than what Michael Jackson did.
Oh, sure.
To me,
it's a little bit of a different kind of apples and oranges, though.
Okay.
To a degree. I mean, Michael Jackson didn't know how to write music.
True.
A lot of it was in his head. And he would say to somebody, okay, I want... and, whoever the musicians would interpret it, or somebody would write it down for him or whatever. But I think there's that creativity there with him that it's completely different than what Prince did.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Prince owned the entire thing.
Yeah, I mean, Prince was a multi-instrumentalist. Michael Jackson was not. But, do you look at the success of how many albums each one of those guys sold? It saddens me that we're talking about them and they're not here anymore. Both of
100%.
them.
Yeah, that's the heady part of the whole thing is they're no longer with us. But that conversation always goes on. Like, what do you value success? Is it purely money and album sales? It's impact? What is it?
Oh, well, I think it's a lot of things. I think it's impact. Michael Jackson was a little weirder than Prince was, but
was he?
But Prince was odd. I mean, come on, he changed his name how many times into a symbol and things like that. So they both, maybe that's where fame messes you up. Because Prince was young when he put out the first album, not as young as Michael Jackson, but I think maybe that's where fame kind of messes with people when they're young, and you kind of have a lot of hangers on and people that tell you you're yes men, enablers.
100%.
And obviously when you see what happened to Michael Jackson and you see what happened to Prince, it's the same thing.
I think so. What's interesting for me is to look back on interviews and so forth, like with Morris Day at the time. Like he'll give an interview now and talk about the before time when Prince was not famous yet.
Right.
And just talking about how normal it was. You'd say, you can't imagine Prince being normal, but he was very normal.
Right.
And maybe always was normal. Maybe it was the persona that was shown. I mean, who ultimately knows, right?
Right.
I kind of think Michael Jackson wasn't normal, but there was some weird stuff there. But
then again, too, you're what, 11 or 12, and you're thrown into this spotlight and
with him,
and you're growing up on stage, and your voice, one bad apple. From like Donny Osmond. I mean, his voice too, and then Michael Jackson. And I just heard some Osmond Brothers stuff not too long ago on the radio. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these things so high. But then all of a sudden, you're growing, and it's puberty, and now your voice is changing, and
certainly.
You can't get that back, what you had when you were 11, 12, 13. So it's got to mess with your head. It's got to mess with your head.
Late 80s, I think it was 87, there was an attempt to bring Donnie back because I guess the powers that be, the record companies thought, hey, Michael Jackson made the transition. Look at all that.
Sure.
And they tried to bring Donnie back, 88, 87, and there was a video and stuff. It just didn't click.
Right, he had that one song that was out. The title of it throws me off. I can't remember what it was, but it did fairly well. But I think that was a little late in the game, though, because Michael Jackson was already making his stride at the end of the 70s into the 80s. So
yeah, he never stopped.
Right. Took that time off, between maybe 15 and then when I'm trying to think, what year did Off the Wall come out?
80?
Yeah. So So maybe there was a couple years there, and then all of a sudden he started working on some
Thriller.
Material. And I mean,
Thriller was 82. That's a
wow.
When you sit and think about that, like when you think, well, Thriller was a mid 80s thing. No. Thriller was 82.
Right.
Which is insane.
It is. It's crazy. It's like time is going by so fast anymore, and it's just like, slow down.
I know. What do you think? What are your memories of the 1984 album and that Van Halen, that version of Van Halen? There, the last album where they were all quote unquote together.
Right. Oh, I loved it. I wasn't. I will admit, I wasn't a fan of the keyboards. Jump kind of was like
Diver Down. It kind of gave us a taste of that, right?
Sure.
The album before.
But Diver Down was a little bit more raw. But Diver Down just had some funky stuff in it that was keyboards, but not. Da, da, da.
It wasn't the main instrument.
Then when you hear what they did with Sammy, it was like, Ed, are you in the band anymore? Because it was just all keyboard, a lot of keyboard. Do 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 do. I'm like, oh, come on.
Could you imagine what David Lee Roth was thinking though when he heard like the Hagar version? I mean, the success was undoubtable.
Oh, sure.
What Roth must have been thinking about that version of Van Halen.
Well, Dave was doing okay by himself.
Yeah, but what it turned into.
Yeah. And I often wonder, when you're looking at Van Halen, are you a Van Halen fan with Dave because of Dave, or the music was a lot more rock and hard? I mean, Little Dreamer to me, till that song still stands the test of time as far as I'm concerned. Oh, yeah. But are you a fan of Van Halen and Dave because it was more raw and more rockin', or are you a fan of Van Halen, Sammy, because it was more poppy and more keyboards?
I think it's a great question.
Yeah.
I think if you love rock and roll, especially kind of hard rock, I'd venture to say that the second version of Van Halen might not appeal to you much. I mean, it was a pop band.
Sure. And I had seen Sammy multiple times by himself, and his solo shows were
the Red Rocker,
so much fun, and he was so great on stage with just people would throw up pops, a lollipop, and he'd open up the lollipop, and then people would throw up notes, and he'd read the notes, and just he was very good and very quick on his feet with the audience,
right?
Almost like Vegas a little bit. In that respect, but he rocked. I mean, he rocked. And then the whole Van Halen stuff, I was like, it was still good, but it was just, Dave Van Halen. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, because that first album, especially, just the impact that it had on the industry.
Sure.
The sound.
Right.
That guitar sound. The disappointing thing about Van Halen for me was that they should have gotten heavier. You had two guitarists now, right? You had a double guitar attack.
Right.
The Van Halen material should have gotten ballsier.
Good point. Yeah.
But it didn't. Good point. It went the other direction.
No, yeah,
and
you're right.
Sammy did a lot of singing and not playing in there, too. If you remember, he was kind of taking Ross' place as the singer.
Right.
But he was a hell of a guitar player in his own right.
Absolutely. Because when he did his solo shows, he played, and that had to be odd for him because, sometimes that's their crutch. Like a lot of times you 100%. See people on stage, like a lot of these American idols, and they, they're people that are guitar players, and then all of a sudden they come out and they don't have their guitar, and they don't know what to do with themselves, their hands, and all that stuff. So, and they grab onto the microphone for dear life, like, oh my God, help me.
That happens.
But I mean, that's weird that you would say that because you would think with Sammy, it would have gotten more rockin'.
I would think so. I mean, the table was set to do that.
Right.
They just didn't do it. And but again, who knows what the influence was, right? I mean, to be living it in an era where MTV was dominating and pop was attracting so much money.
Sure.
But Van Halen is not a metal band to me. When I think about Van Halen in the 70s, that's its own thing.
Right.
David and Alex and Eddie and Michael, that is its own thing.
Right.
You can't pigeonhole that into anything.
I would just say straight ahead rock if you're gonna
I guess,
but
for another, it was tones and sounds that the industry had never heard before.
Right. It was kind of like what Randy Rhoads was doing with Ozzy. I mean,
5 years later.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it was. The way he played his guitar too was just like, what the heck is this? And those two both did something that was just so rare and really stuck out because it was so different. Not for people like, that don't know how to play the guitar, for the listener or just your average, like, whoa, what is this? And then when you saw the videos and he's doing the whole finger fret thing stuff, it's like, wow, that's impressive.
It is. And it's like when you heard the first guitar riff off of the first record in the reverb that's on there, that tone, beyond the skill level, that tone had never been played in rock prior. I mean, when Blackmore, Clapton, anyone before that, they had their own thing, but that was just so fresh and new.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of carried all the way into 1984. It changed a little.
Right.
Especially when the synthesizers came in there, but the guitar was still kind of the same. The settings in his food chain were the same.
Right.
But man, it just seemed like everything changed when he left the band.
Yeah.
Even Eddie's tone changed.
Yeah.
On the very first record.
Right. And, the keyboards, too, were just kind of.
But they weren't the only band doing that.
True. But it wasn't like, they weren't like great keyboards. Do I dare say that? I just did.
I know what you're saying.
You know what I mean? It's like, do, 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 do. That is Cris Winter, 9 years old, learning how to play the organ out at South Hills Village Mall at the Kimball store. That's do, 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 do. You know what I mean? It wasn't like anything really thought-provoking or insane, intense, like a Rick Wakeman or, somebody like that.
Geddy Lee, someone like that.
Yeah, it was.
They weren't trying to create that. It looks like they were trying to create pop music.
Yeah. And look at the sales of what they did with Sammy. They made a lot of money.
It did make a lot of money, but it wasn't
tours sold out.
It wasn't the same to me. One of the bands that are on this list, it surprised me because again, I know, like you mentioned prior, probably it's not statistically accurate, but they have a Rush song up here from Distant. The song is
Distant Early Warning
from Grace Under Pressure. It was great. Oh yeah, but in terms of that wasn't classic Rush. That album ushered in kind of a new era for Rush.
Right.
I think when they came from Signals to that record,
right.
It was a 2-year gap, and all of a sudden now there's this really heavily drenched synthesizer Rush album.
This past week, Signals turned 40.
Oh man, that's painful.
Yeah, Analog Kids. Like
that's a great record, and it started there, I think, but it really got ultra heavy synthesizers on that record, and Alex's guitar tone changed too. It became a different band.
Right. But still some of the best drumming by the man, the Professor.
Of course.
Yeah, it's
of course.
There's another one. It's like, oh my gosh, can't believe he's gone.
Yeah, that's pretty painful.
Yeah.
That's pretty painful. What else about 84 did you remember? I'm obviously working at a record store at the time. Like, was New Wave kind of, like, that was a thing. The Fix was out there. That was pretty big at the time.
Like I said, the Smiths.
Billy Idol.
The Smiths came in. The Fix.
Public Image, to a lesser degree.
Yes. The Fix. Who else?
The Fix were pretty big for a while there.
Right. Pretenders, Learning to Crawl came out in 84. They were considered an alternative band, not really a rock band.
Did Petty have a record that year? Tom Petty?
I can't recall. Don Henley.
Oh my, yeah.
Had his second solo album away from the Eagles, Building the Perfect Beast, which was phenomenal. Great album. Trying to think what else.
I remember it being such a
Dawkins album came out that year. I remember
it did.
We played the bejesus. Steve Perry, hello, woohoo!
Yeah, how could you forget that?
Street Talk came out.
How could you forget that
was
one?
his first album away from Journey, and probably the
Sherry,
the demise of Journey eventually,
Kinda,
as we know them with Steve Perry. Yeah, Street Talk came out that year. I'm trying to think what else. I remember working at National Record Mart, and I won a contest because they had these things on the wall that you could decorate with an album. And they would give you what were called picture flats, which were album covers, but they were just
12 by 12
cardboard,
yeah.
right? And it was like the album cover without the back end of the album.
Yep. I remember.
And there were posters, and I did one for Grace Under Pressure for Rush, and I won the contest, and I won tickets to the show. So I was like,
I remember that.
Yeah, they came.
I remember that.
The
show.
National Record Mart Brass came out and checked out everybody who participated, and I won that one. So
that year, I had to go to a show. I had to take a girlfriend's younger sister to see the Thompson Twins.
Oh yeah, Into the Gap came out that
painful.
year. Oh come on! Oh,
and then I think
fun.
I think the next night I had to go. The next night or the next week I had to go see Duran Duran.
Ooh.
At the
Seven in the Ragged Tiger tour,
which was technically 83, I think.
Ice Storm.
Yeah, but they started touring.
Yeah.
And bled over into 84.
Right.
That's a big area, big time.
Oh, sure.
The Scorpions, it says, had a big album. Their Rock Like a Hurricane was 84, right?
Well, that was off Love at First Sting was that album.
Yep, it certainly was. This list is also saying that Cyndi Lauper made her way onto the world stage at that time.
This is
true.
That
right?
She's
I
so
thought
unusual.
It was 83, though.
She's so unusual. Yeah, that came out. It might have been end of 80. No, it was 84. I'm almost sure it was 84. That was a big album at National Record Mart that year as well. Yeah.
I remember her videos had that wrestling guy in there.
Lou Albano. Oh my gosh. I can't tell you anything about my financial, how my 401k is doing, but I know such stupid stuff. It blows my mind.
Did Lou used to pierce his...
Yeah, with gum bands or rubber bands, whatever.
I mean, it looks so painful.
Yeah.
Lou Albano. You know what else came out with great? How can we forget Spinal Tap came out that year?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it did.
Spinal Tap.
That did. Yeah,
I didn't know what to believe when I saw that. And wasn't it interesting that they were able to make fun of heavy metal that early on in the process?
Yeah. Well, it was kind of just... It depends on what you call heavy metal. I mean, Bon Jovi came out with Bon Jovi that year. I don't consider them heavy metal. Never did.
No.
Hair band, maybe, kind of. But I thought Bon Jovi was pop rock. But Judas Priest had an album out that year. The Scorpions had an album out that year. Like I said, Dawkins had an album out, and Metallica had Ride the Lightning out in 84.
They did. It's a brutal record.
Yeah. So
it's often forgotten now because they became a pop rock band. Sorry.
Yeah.
But they kind of did, right?
Sure.
And Thompson Twins, Steve Perry. Wait a second. Night Ranger,
yeah. Yep.
Night Ranger.
Well,
they were pop rock, right?
I want to say, let me think here. Was it 84? Yes, it was 80. It was 84. Because Night Ranger was my actual first interview I ever did in
Jeff
radio. I was in college, and the album came out, and I reached out to Caesar Engler and said, "Hey, would they be willing to do an interview?" Thinking like a phone interview or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll hook you up after the show." So I'm like, "Oh, great!" So I go to where I was supposed to go. I have passes and things, and I was to interview Jack Blades and oh gosh, here we go. Oh my God, Brad Gillis. Hello.
Yeah.
And
the guitar guy.
I'm a nervous wreck. My hands are shaking so bad, and I'm like, and I didn't know what to say. So I have a tape recorder and all this stuff, and they're like, "Take a deep breath." They hooked up all my equipment for me. And that made me feel so good and so at ease.
Certainly.
That after that, it was just like, a great conversation between three people.
Cool.
Kind of getting to know what it's like to be a rock star and what their lives are like and all that type of stuff. And they asked me questions about me and
that's very cool.
After the interview was over, they did a couple of IDs, and after that, they helped me unplug all my equipment. And the two of them walked me out to the outside. We walked across the stage at the Stanley Theater and out the door. And there were all these girls hanging outside, and they had their arms around me. And I'm like, so this is what it's like to be a rock star, huh? And they're like, you know it. And I just ran into them about month and a half ago in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Oh, get out.
I went out to the Night Ranger show and got backstage passes and just got to see them very quickly. But they're such nice guys. And I wrote something about them on my Facebook page. And Kelly Kagi responded with, like, thank you for being so nice and remembering that and all that stuff. And I'm like, every time I've met them, and it's been a zillion times, always just the coolest, nicest, down-to-earth guys you've ever met. Mm-hmm. Just, they've never changed. Jack Blades and Brad, because I had them, the interview with them and dealt with them, every time I've been with them or have met them, they've always been the same. Just genuinely cool, kind, nice guys. No attitude, no ego, no nothing. Mm-hmm. Years ago, they were in town in Greensburg, and we were backstage, and they did their warm-up, and we're all singing Sister Christian and You Can Still Rock in America while, Brad played the guitar, and, Kelly's over there hitting something with his drumsticks. And, I took my phone on. I never shared that with anybody. I wouldn't do that because it was just like, it was my moment with, and some friends with the band. And I was like, no, that's just something cool. I'll show it to a couple friends. Yeah, for sure. But I've never posted that on Facebook because it's just such a cool thing. But yeah, I mean, they're really good guys, really good
Brad
guys.
Gillis is a hell of a talent, though. I mean, from a guitarist standpoint, like, just underrated. Probably because the music that they played wasn't that challenging, but he has the chops.
Oh,
I think he's well respected as a guitar player.
He replaced Randy Rhoads.
He did. That's where he came from.
Yeah, so.
Was he also in Damn Yankees with Nugent, or was that Jack
No, that was
Blades?
Tommy Shaw, Jack Blades.
That's where Blades
and
played.
Ted, and...
Who's the drummer? It was an Aldrich, wasn't it?
Michael... I can picture him. I can't remember his name. Oops.
That was later in the 80s, though, right? It was like 89 or
High
something
Enough,
like that.
and,
Yeah, that was a thing for a while, for sure.
Yeah.
That was a thing for a while. What about Loverboy? Wasn't that in 84? Mike Reno? Have you seen Mike Reno recently?
Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. See, that's not right. That's not right. I saw Loverboy back in the 80s. The Hooters opened up for them.
Oh my God!
At the Civic Arena, and I'll tell you what, it was one of the funnest shows I've ever been at. I did a story on my Facebook page, Cris Winter Radio, if you'd like to follow along.
Cris Winter Radio,
and that's CRIS. A lot of people like to put
even
that H
I
in
make
there.
that mistake sometimes
That's
when I
all
type too fast.
No worries, but yeah, that show was just so much fun. Always loved the band. When that album came out, Lucky One. The Lucky.
It's a big record.
Everybody did the fingers behind your butt. Hey, are you lucky?
The red leather pants.
Exactly. So it was like a joke among friends. And then they played the Palace Theater in Greensburg, maybe March, I want to say it was, and that was their first show back since COVID. They canceled everything, and they were phenomenal. I love them. I thought they were great.
He still has the chops.
Yeah, I mean. Does he have the voice he had back in the 80s? No.
But he can
everything
sing,
sounded
and you can tell it's him.
So good.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it was a very stripped down stage.
Right.
They were just here last weekend. I was really bummed. I had the choice between that or Ringo, and I'm like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And I went to Ringo. Fabulous. But yeah, it was just, people were all like, oh my gosh. I'm like, come on. It doesn't matter. This is what matters.
Yeah, you went there. You went there to watch and listen to the music you remember.
I mean, Paul Dean is not a spring chicken, and he still brought it. He's probably in his...
Well, neither is Ringo.
He's probably in his late 70s. Damn. Paul Dean is, I believe. Because I think out of anybody in Loverboy, he was...
The oldest.
A lot older than the rest of the guys.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, Ringo, 82... I would put him up against anybody half his age. He ran, I was on his side where he came down the steps, and he literally would go to the steps and they'd flash a light and they were like trying to help him. And he's like, no, I got this.
I'm good.
Doesn't put his hands on the handrail and just
runs down the steps. And my husband and I are like, oh my gosh, Ringo's going to fall and hurt himself, But he didn't. I mean, and same thing going up. They're like, can we help you? And he's like, almost like, get off me. I got this,
He still has it.
Yeah, and he drummed fabulous. He didn't drum the whole entire time. He got out in front of the stage and sang some songs.
Right.
But I mean, him and Greg Bissonette drummed.
Yep.
I mean, I was kind of watching that a lot, and fabulous. He was absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
But with Loverboy, it's like, it's terrible that we're in a society now that your looks are everything. Mm-hmm. Whether you're, Ann Wilson and you've gained some weight or whatever, or you're Nancy Wilson, you've gained weight, or you're, Mike Reno. That doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
Yeah, part of the show business.
Sure.
I mean, it's just, it's sad, but it also comes with the territory.
Sure. It does. And I think back to somebody like Lou Gramm, who had gained a lot of weight, but he was on steroids for his cancer, or whatever medicine he was on. And, friends were like, oh my God. I'm like, he's sick.
Absolutely.
Can we cut people a break?
Aren't
Do we
you
have to
glad
be so
you're here?
nasty?
You hear he's doing it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
Like they're still attempting to give you the best show they possibly can.
Sure. But there are those bands that, maybe it's time to, singers that maybe it's time to call it a day.
I know a few.
And so do I. And I think we've had this conversation before where you have people like Steve Perry, Rick Emmett, Geddy Lee, Lou Gramm. I'm trying to think, all these guys that were trying to outdo each other singing. Jeff Tate, yeah. All these guys were trying to outdo each other with their singing, and everybody just kept getting higher and higher and higher.
Stanley.
And it's like, they've said, why did we do that? Now fans expect people to be, whoa, and you get older. Your body changes, everything changes, and you just can't pull it off anymore.
Yeah, there was especially I think kind of like the late 80s, there was this crazy like vocal gymnastics that was going on.
Exactly.
Nuts.
Right.
I mean, I would go back and try to learn to play some of those records, and they're in these really odd keys. Like some of them are above standard tuning. It's just like, what were they doing? Like, why would they do that?
I mean, I think of like Journey's Escape album. There are songs on there where, the album to me was very raw sounding. So Steve Perry's voice really kind of stuck out. It wasn't, overproduced with like Roy Thomas Baker, like some of their early stuff. Right. And it was like, wow, how is he going to be able to do this in concert? And he did, but
night after night.
Yeah. And a lot of that pressure was on him and the touring and all that. And I think that's why he,
I think that definitely
86th, being a part of Journey, because it was getting back into that grind. I mean, he even told me that it was tough. People don't understand when you're the guitar player, you might be able to work around a finger injury or something like that. He says, but when you're the singer and it's your voice that people are expecting to hear, what do you do?
You're exposed.
Exactly.
Very much exposed.
They made an agreement. I think we've talked about this before. They had a pact that when they did meet and greets, everybody came out. But it got to the point where girls are hanging on to him and stuff like that. And he's like, I can't afford to get sick. Because if I get sick, then we cancel. Maybe we don't get the show back. And they were selling out everywhere.
Oh, yeah. I heard David Lee Roth in a very lucid moment talk about how he would always wear skull caps all the time. He says, I lost my hair generally because I just constantly wore skull caps on the bus no matter where I was. I knew that if I got sick, if I got a cold, I couldn't sing, and we had to cancel.
I don't know if that's why Dave lost his hair.
Probably other reasons, but ultimately,
I never heard that one.
He used it.
I understand. I understand what he's saying, because I do have friends of mine that met Steve Perry back in Journey, back in the early days when they were really hugely popular. I want to say, maybe not Raised on Radio, but somewhere around there. And he came out with gloves on and had a towel around his neck and stuff. He was just trying to take it. But when you're meeting people after a performance like that, and you go back to your hotel, and, a lot of people don't realize that, the heat and the cool of a hotel room or a venue where you're playing messes with your voice.
No question.
Richie Blackmore is big on that, keeping the room warm to keep his instruments sounding good. Mm-hmm. Not that he sings, but if you've ever seen him lately, last time I saw him was down at the Rex Theater. I mean, it was...
How long ago was that?
gosh, I don't know. It was like, oh my God, it's ungodly hot. I'm like, is anybody else hot in here? And everybody else was like, is it warm in here, or am I like something going on with me? You know, and that was what he liked. He liked everything kind of warmer, so it was easier for him to play and things. And you know,
we forgot to talk about the Cars.
Oh my gosh, Heartbeat City came out in '84.
I know.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting record. So that was a blend of rock and what would that be considered, new wave?
They were always, I think, new wave, because that was, you know, when I was in high school when they came out, it was something different. But you listen today, their music was so basic. It's like,
it was,
you know, very basic. But I mean, I just think they had a look.
Produced well, though.
Yes. Roy Thomas Baker. They looked different. They were mysterious kind of looking. And I think that's where a lot of that was. These guys aren't like your normal rock stars. You know what I mean? And, you know, some of their stuff was kind of quirky and different and weird, dangerous type, you know, going into Candy-O. I mean, I think of that, those two songs. You know, I think they were a new wave, you know, but when Heartbeat City came out, then you had Drive.
Yes.
And that was, I think, their first number one, or maybe their only number one song, you know.
There's Wham, too.
I just got done reading.
Wham was a band.
Yeah. What was the name of the album? The big one? Make It Big. Make It Big was the name of that album.
The song was Wake Me Up Before You Go Go.
Yeah. Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Relax was big in 84. I don't know if it came out in 84, but that album, the song was huge in early 84. I remember that. Yeah, but I mean, Wham. I mean, I just got done doing Andrew Ridgeley's book, and it's fascinating. It's fascinating. Those two guys were friends from when they were little, and you know, just he says he only wanted to do like one or two albums and just call it a day. I don't know if that's. I think there was more towards, you know, George maybe getting a lot of recognition or attention. Because
but Andrew was a good-looking dude.
Oh my gosh,
that really freaked me out. That like he was in the background.
Yes, yeah,
it had to be intentional.
Yeah, well, he's kind of a quiet guy. I highly recommend his book. It was very good, very good. You know, and he talks about how I think that George Michael sent him a gift for Christmas, and he was going to call him, and then he said right after he got the gift, I think it was right after he got the gift, or he was going to call him to thank him and just catch up, and George Michael's sister called and said that he had passed away.
Wow.
And he says, you know, that was, you know, again, it's one of those situations where, you know, live for today, you know.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
They never had any issues as far as their friendship or anything like that.
Right.
It's just, you know, they made an impact rather quickly when you look at it.
No doubt. I mean, they caught. Well, again, you can talk about the impact of videos, right?
Right.
I mean, they definitely
the short shorts
from that.
with the sweaters and all that stuff, and you know, those types of things. So, yeah, but I mean, if you didn't know what George Michael looked like or Andrew Ridgeley looked like, would you have paid attention to that music? We've had this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Was Culture Club that year as well, too?
Around
the
then.
big one?
Yeah, around then. 83, 84,
I didn't
they
know
started.
what to make out of that. I remember seeing that going, that is everything that I don't understand about music. Because you had Iron Maiden, and all of a sudden you had Culture Club. And in some weird way on television on this new network, it all just blended
worked
together.
Sure, absolutely.
Right? Because there was no real segmenting. It was one after another.
And you think the crossover between like 80 and 81, look at the charts back then, it was a lot of country, a lot of pop, like, you know, Kenny Rogers was everywhere.
Right.
Dottie West and him doing songs together. I don't know if Alabama was around 81 or not.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was just like a really weird,
Oak Ridge Boys.
Eclectic. Yeah, Elvira. It was just like all this weird music. But it all worked.
It
and
did.
I don't think there is that now in radio.
Okay.
I don't think there is stations that would play a lot of that stuff.
To blend together.
Yeah.
They're all looking for a niche.
Right. I mean, country music is.
What is country music?
I don't know. I don't know. It is so weird. I watched one of these shows the other night, and I'm like, it sounds like Def Leppard with fiddles. Come on, it's doom doom ch, doom doom ch,
and it's everything's about drinking.
Uh-huh.
Or their pickup truck, or
the dog, or the old lady left me.
Yeah, but I mean, everything is about drinking, and it's just like, when I think back to like, the days of Dwight Yoakam being popular, and Rodney Crowell, and those types of artists, and a lot of the women that were, Katie Oslin and things. Yeah, the music was good. I just don't get the country music right now. I'm not.
Don't you think it's a formula? That they're being spoon-fed by folks to get on the radio.
Sure.
And that's always been part of rock and roll.
Yeah.
But I mean, really now for country, if country is still country, is it pop, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, a lot of them are crossing over into pop music. I'm not saying that's wrong, because, that if it fits, why not?
Yeah, there's no rules.
Right. But
Didn't it start in the 90s, though? I mean, I think of, like, the guy from the Hootie and the Blowfish, right? He went over to country, and it's like he started, even like Bon Jovi did a country like, rock and country record.
Right.
It seemed like there was an attempt always to do that.
Well, with Darius Rucker from Hootie and the Blowfish, I think they just, kind of were doing their own thing, and he found a niche there. But, he's from South Carolina. It's not like he's from Chicago being a country singer, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's just, I listen to it and I'm like, what the hell is this? I don't know.
So they're saying that there was a record by Bananarama. Do you remember them?
Yeah, sure.
Cruel Summer.
Robert De Niro's Waiting.
Yeah, I remember
Talking
that.
Italian. Yeah.
Talking Italian.
Well, that's the Robert De Niro's Waiting. Talking Italian. Yeah, I mean.
How about Corey Hart in that video with the sunglasses? Could you be any cooler than that?
Sure.
Right?
I mean, then he had another song off that album that was just fabulous. It was a slow song. Now I can't remember the name of it. Oh, God. This is what happens when you get old. Yeah, it was a slow song. It'll come to me. But it was a beautiful song. Mm-hmm. And, like, where did he go? I mean, he was on the charts there for a while. Bryan Adams' Reckless album came out in 84.
Brian, that was a big one.
Yeah, but it's like Bryan Adams turned into a balladeer, and it was like, anytime when we're at home and we have our iPod on or whatever, iPad, listening to music, and something from Bryan Adams' like first two albums come out, my husband and I look at each other like, remember when Bryan Adams used to rock, But yeah, because like the later stuff that came out was Everything I Do It For You, and those types of songs.
Yeah, they turned him into a crooner. They did.
Yeah. But he's fabulous live. I mean,
he's powerful.
Yeah, he's great live. It's just his rock music was just as good. As far as I'm
was
concerned.
good, and it may have been that year with John Cougar Mellencamp, right? Or was it 83? But I mean, man, he hit the scene hard.
Yeah. Well, I just did a post on my Facebook page, American Fool. That came out in 82.
Okay.
And he was the first male artist to have the #1 album on the charts and 2 songs in the top 10 at the same time. That was a first.
Why do you think he hit? What did he tap into? Was it Americana? Was it the Midwest?
Midwest Americana. A good-looking guy, who came from a small town. There was that. Maybe that at those times that's what we were looking for, just something different. But I think a lot of it was just nice acoustic music, and he rocked too. Mm-hmm. But I think maybe that, like you said, Americana was the first word I thought of, or just Midwestern.
John Cougar. Depeche Mode's on this list too.
Mm-hmm.
People are people.
Yep.
Was that rock? That is synthesizers. We know that.
I don't know if it was rock. It was alternative. It was modern rock.
So,
I mean, back in the days, it was either modern rock or new wave, and I would certainly, say they were. Fabulous band. Love that band so much. And I was sad to see that, Andrew Fletcher passed away. Mm-hmm. But apparently they are going to start working on some new music. It'll just be the two of them, right. David Gahan and Martin Gore. But, like they said, this going back into the studio is where they feel comfortable after what happened. And, he certainly wouldn't want them not to not stop making music. So whether they'll tour, I don't know. But
did you ever see them live?
Depeche Mode? Oh, yeah.
How do you describe that experience? Because I have, and I got an opinion on that.
Oh, they were fabulous. They were, I mean,
So
talk
that
about
was fabulous to you then.
talk about a
Okay.
band that got people up out of their seats and dance like crazy.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but they have some cool stuff that's the early days was more synthesizer, and then in the later days they have a lot of stuff that is I don't want to say industrial because it's just like moody.
Very moody.
Moody music, you know, not the up dancing do 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 do. But
I don't know. I took a date to see that in '90, and it was the day after a Kiss show there. So it was Kiss, and then like a Friday night, then Saturday night it was Depeche Mode, I think. And again, coming off of a different experience, but it seemed like it's like, well, I'm watching guys up there pump like recorded music into the speakers, and you know, it just didn't seem like a concert to me. It was something else, like a DJ up there doing. I'm paying money to go see a DJ put on a light show.
yeah, but
That's kind of the vibe I got.
yeah, well, a lot of that was electronic, you know. So if you're not into that, but
Is that a concert? What is that?
it's a concert. They're still singing and dancing, and
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, come on. It's
I don't
not
know.
like
I don't know.
it's not like it's bands that are out there today where they're tracked and they're lip syncing and things like that. I mean, these guys actually play their instruments. You know, Martin Gore plays a guitar.
Yeah.
Just that was the niche they had with the electronic type of stuff. But like I said, over the years, you know, they changed.
Okay.
Like in the late '80s, they started finding a different path. But they're I just fabulously. I love that band so much.
Well, the music, yeah. I also love the music. I just found the live experience to be weird. I felt the same way when I saw the Thompson Twins. I remember seeing that like it was just odd to me that they were programming and they're pressing buttons and
Yeah.
and the singer
a lot of
was
bands do
singing,
that.
I think.
A lot of keyboard players do that. You know, he'll hit something and that's the background
Sequence
of this.
it,
Yes,
yeah.
you know, and well, do you rip on somebody like Ed Sheeran who goes out with a guitar and foot pedals and he plays a shing shing and hits a foot pedal and all of a sudden shing shing.
Yeah,
shing,
I don't think
shing,
you can
shing,
rip
shing.
on them. It just, and obviously, if there's a
It's
market
genius.
for it, then
It's
they can
genius.
do it.
I mean, what is he paying for? Let's be honest. He's not
raking
paying
in the
for
money.
a drum tech. He's not paying for a keyboard tech, a bass tech. He probably has, besides the lighting in the stage, he probably has maybe a guitar tech or two. You would know that better than me. And probably a handful of IT people that are extremely good at what they do. I'm
Probably.
talking CMU type of people.
But that's not a, so for my money, based upon what I've experienced in my life, that is just not a concert to me. That's something. I don't know what it is, but it's not. I don't know.
Well, he
I can
made
see
a
that
ton of money, Eric, so what do we know?
I don't know anything, but I mean that's something I would see in a bar, and I would go, "Okay, I got guys."
well,
using
it's just
lapels,
not
but-
your cup of tea. That's all. There's no shame in saying you didn't get it, but there's
like a case in point. Let's say there was a hard rock. Let's say, would I be okay with a hard rock act going up there with just a singer and an acoustic guitar and tracking everything? You know, the music and him playing along to that and singing. Would I be okay with that? I don't think that's a concert.
No, you wouldn't be because you're expecting the band to be there. But if you know this is how Depeche Mode is and how they do their stuff,
That is their thing. what
that
you're
is
saying.
their thing.
I see what
Yeah.
you're
So
saying.
you know, nobody's going in there expecting Depeche Mode to be, you know, full throttle guitars and jumping off the stage and stuff like that. That's not them.
Yeah.
That's all.
You know what's interesting though, Chris? I went to Duran Durna that same year in '84, and I would have to say that I was pleasantly surprised because I deemed their music to be very popish, and there wasn't a lot of, I don't know, organic instruments there. But man, was I blown away!
Oh, yeah.
Andy Taylor and his brother, was his brother? Or
No, they're not related,
brothers?
no.
John and
There's
Andy
three.
Taylor.
There's three Taylors
And the
in the
drummer
band.
was a Taylor
Yeah.
too. But everything was big sounding. It was powerful, and Andy Taylor's guitar was heavy. I mean,
Yeah,
that was like
exactly.
a show.
Yeah, John
That
Taylor is. If you watched any of his stuff he did over the pandemic on playing bass,
It's a thing. Yeah.
he is good.
Yeah.
He's very good and
Yeah.
very talented. And you know, a lot of times I think with you know Duran, you look at them, they're five good-looking guys, and girls like them, and they're screaming bloody murder for them when they go on stage, and you're not really paying attention to the actual talent that those guys
Yeah.
have.
Go see them live. It'll change
Oh my
your mind.
gosh, they're fabulous.
Yeah, that's an
Fabulous.
example where I was expecting a bunch of synthesized crap, and they came out just like holy shit, is that heavy?
Right. It's just if you're misled by a band, you're paying a lot of money and the band isn't what they are, then I can see you being upset. But if this is how they do their job and they're electronic or whatever,
that is their thing.
That is their thing. Yeah. And Ed Sheeran is, every time I've seen Ed Sheeran, he's done this thing with the key, with the foot pedals and stuff. And can't remember when he opened up for Taylor Swift, he had a band or not. I can't remember, but I mean, you got to give him credit. But again, all the people that like him are younger. Maybe
it's a
that's
different experience, different generations.
Yeah,
I guess.
Exactly.
Like if I had a conversation with my son about like what live music is to him, it's just a totally different.
Sure.
His expectations are different.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think that's also, Chris, why so many acts now are incorporating tracks and background. They're just doing it because maybe they can get away with it because other bands are doing it, and the crowds kind of expect it now.
Yeah.
I
don't think our age people are expecting.
No, we don't expect.
No, we don't.
We
don't want it.
Music.
That's right.
But and I think that's why,
especially for what you're paying for a concert ticket. I mean, let's be honest.
Especially now.
Yeah, it's out of control. It's out of control.
Are they that high though because they've lost their ability to monetize their music? Are the ticket prices that high because they can't sell records to make income that way?
Well, I look at it this way. This all kind of changed when the Eagles did their Hell Freezes Over tour. Irving Azoff was their manager, and he's the one that, with the band, set the ticket price. And we paid it. We were paying over $100. I went to see them both nights at Star Lake, and I was in the third or fourth row. I didn't get freebie tickets. I paid for them because that's my husband's favorite band. And it was like, we might never see them again, so all right, let's do it. Full right here, but they were fabulous. I mean, they always put on a phenomenal show, but that's where the ticket prices started to go up. And is it because they don't make money off albums? Possibly, yeah. But with the bands that have record deals with record labels, and there's not many of them like there used to be. I mean, the record business is not what it used to be. If you can do it on your own and manage it on your own, you're going to make you'll make money if you're good at what you do. And by that, I mean, your music is good and it speaks for itself. But there are record labels back years ago. I remember when 30 Seconds to Mars was suing I forget the record label. Was it Geffen? But anyway, they were suing their record label, or the record label was suing them for $1 million. And they were just like, wait a second, and Jared Leto went ahead and did a whole entire documentary called Artifact. Watch it.
I've heard of that.
Highly recommend it.
I've heard of that.
If you want to know anything about the music business, and not just the record side or the band side, but really how things get broken down,
right? It's
insane. Yeah. It is insane. There's some labels that have what they call a 360
deal,
and that is, a
little bit of everything.
You pay. You ship an album or a record or whatever, and there's breakage, there's money that comes out of your pocket for that. And they were charging them for like cassettes, and they weren't even making cassettes anymore. And he's like, why are you charging us for cassettes? There's record labels that take a take of your merchandise money.
Right.
And a lot of bands, some bands, not everybody, but a lot of bands make a lot of money off of that.
I think that's the bulk of a lot of bands.
Exactly. Now, today it is,
right,
sure.
Right.
But it's called Artifact. Fabulous. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. And I mean, he talks to, not just himself, but he talks to other people in the industry. He talks to Irving Azoff. He talks to Chester Bennington from Linkin Park and other bands that were kind of caught in that same kind of situation. And you don't realize, I believe it was the Eagles only made, when Hotel California came out, they only made like a penny on the album or something. It was something ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And, that's why
when there was money to go around back then.
Absolutely. And I mean, you figure how many, or their greatest hits, how many songs, that greatest hits album went to number one and stayed at number one for such a long time. And
right.
Even though it was a greatest hits album, it still brought the record label money.
No question.
And it's expensive to tour. I think now today, with the younger people, you have to have things for them to look at. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in any disrespect at all, but I mean, it's just
true.
We've grown up in a different time, and I'm sure people that are older than us, you know, they're in their 70s or 80s, you know, they just expected the person to come out and play. And then as people got a little bit older, now it's like, okay, those people have gotten older, but now there's us, and now we want the flash. We want the leather pants, the crazy hair, the jumps, things to keep us occupied. But now I think it's gone in another different direction, you know? It's just the generational thing, you know?
Yeah, attention spans are shorter now generally for everybody.
And I really don't think there's a lot of like loyalty to bands anymore. Like it was when we were growing up. When you got an album, you took it home. You didn't let it sit in your bedroom. You opened it up. You tore the plastic off of it. If it was a double album or it had the liner notes, you looked at the liner notes. You read them. You memorized. You played the album. You sang along with it.
100%.
You listened to it 500 times so that you knew the words to the album by the end of the week. And it was an experience where now with downloading and all that stuff, that isn't there. And, you know, no matter what album you had back when you were younger, for me, I don't know, Peter Frampton or Journey or Daryl Hall and John Oates or Pablo Cruz or whoever I liked, I bought that album, every album, because that I support. Cris Winter supported these guys.
That's your thing.
And I would listen to it, and maybe it wasn't the best album, but I would find something very positive about it. And I'm like, you know what? And I'll go back and I'll listen to it now. I'm like, this is actually a really good record. You know, I found the good in everything. I never really listened to something and be like, oh my God, this song sucks. Move ahead or flip the record over or anything like that. No, I spent my hard-earned money on this album, and damn it, I'm going to like it.
I'm going to take every ounce of it. Yeah,
exactly.
And that is interesting because that's how we ingested our music then.
Right. I'm not alone. I mean, you know, the record,
Not at all.
the liner notes. I mean, I can remember opening up Infinity and reading about, you know, Skinner dying and their, you know, we remember our brothers on the road and things like that. I mean, those types of things. And I thought, oh my gosh, how cool that
That's what kids are missing.
There's none of that.
The album experience gave you information.
Right.
And we were thirsty for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we didn't have other venues to go find it or even search for it.
Or, I mean, hey, how did you find out a record was coming out? Circus Magazine.
Hit Parader.
You know, Rolling Stone. Those types of things.
That's the only way.
That was the only way. We didn't have the internet.
Chris, I drove from Pittsburgh to Allentown in '83 to see a Kiss show based upon what was printed in a magazine. I had no verification that it actually was going to happen that day.
Right.
But I did it because that's what it said in the magazine. It could have been canceled. I would have no way of knowing.
Yeah. You know, maybe you might have called maybe a radio station and hope that somebody would have the information.
Verify it, right.
Yeah, to verify it. But yeah, absolutely. Go to Cleveland and be like, you know, hey, if the show didn't happen, we're like, okay.
If we're here, we'll do something else.
We're not going to freak out. We're just going to have some fun, find something to do, and then we'll drive home and tell Mom and Dad we saw a fabulous show. That's all. Yeah, I mean.
No, we wouldn't do that, would we?
But I mean, it's different. It's you know, to me, that's the experience, and I realize vinyl's coming back, and hopefully the younger people will realize how cool it is, and a lot of them are, you know, discovering vinyl and stuff. So hopefully that'll change.
I think the convenience of downloading, though, is going to be hard to break.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
You know, even for us old folks. I mean, because I love the idea of having vinyl, and I love the memories of that time.
Right.
But if you gave me my druthers, I'm probably going to just grab the download because it's just convenient.
Well, now it is.
You know.
Now it is. But you look at, I have a bedroom that is 3 walls of nothing but music. I have like this big thing that holds all my albums, and then I have CDs above that, and the CDs go all the way around the room.
Right on.
Top to, you know, floor to ceiling. And my husband got iTunes, and he would take, while he was working, would take a stack of record or CDs down, and he downloaded everything in that room.
I did that too.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm glad we did that, because fact of the matter is that how do you know what songs you liked off an album?
Right.
You know, you'd have to, you know, oh yeah, I have that. With some records, not the whole, only the hits are available, not the deep cuts.
Very true.
You know, so with some stuff, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I would never hear that song again. So I'm so glad he did that. Although it took 3 years of his life. No, it took a long time.
No, I know.
It took a long time.
The biggest fear was that if I don't do this, am I gonna, if the CD breaks and CDs aren't made anymore, how am I gonna get my music? No one knew about streaming at the time.
Sure.
I didn't know about any of that
or
stuff,
then there were always this: if you copied music onto burned a CD, that only had a shelf life for so long, and then that almost like that stuff would evaporate off the CD.
They scared us intentionally.
That was the rumor. So I'd mark everything down that was.
What the hell
I need to get
doing?
a life. I really do.
No, I think a lot of people did the exact same thing.
But I mean, it was like, you only have so much time with a CD, so, or you'll lose everything that's on. And
Do you remember how crappy the first DVDs sounded? Man, were they bad.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they were not. Maybe they didn't sound bad when you first heard it because, you couldn't believe it was coming out of this disc, right?
Right.
But then as they got the technology and the oversampling rates and things got better, you go back and listen to one of those early ones. Oh man, was it bad?
Right. But we didn't know any better.
No,
we didn't know any better. We didn't have Bose headphones and iPods the earbuds and all that stuff and all the technology. Yeah, of course not. But
we're listening to AM radios. I was happy to hear Zeppelin on an AM radio on my way home on the school bus. That was the greatest thing ever.
Absolutely. I mean, like when Olivia Newton-John passed away, it was like you heard her on AM radio growing up every day, multiple songs,
Absolutely.
Same with Three Dog Night.
Absolutely.
Three Dog Night was all over AM radio back in the 70s, and it's fabulous.
Radio in general, you're an icon in this town. You're a mainstay in radio and Pittsburgh radio. So I wanted to really ask you a question. Where is it today? Where is radio today from a music standpoint?
Well, I mean, there's still a lot of bands that are getting airplay, new bands that are getting airplay, depending on what you like. I mean, it seems to me the country is, every time I tune into a country station, it's like, I've never heard of that person before.
Interesting.
So it seems like they're doing that a lot. But I mean, there's New Scorpions. We played that, a couple tracks off of that. And I was kind of disappointed because we played 2 tracks off the Scorpions' new album, and they were doing a tour and didn't even come close to Pittsburgh. The closest date they did was Atlantic City Labor Day weekend.
Is that weird?
To me, it's weird. Yeah, it's like you're getting airplay in town. Why wouldn't you come to Pittsburgh? I don't know what the deal is with that, with the logistics of the band, and maybe they only are here for X amount of time, and whatever. But yeah, I just kind of thought that was kind of odd.
Is it still the same arrangement today as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago in regards to new bands? I mean, is it still the same process to get someone to take a look at it and get some airplay? Is it still the same thing?
Well, I don't know that for a fact, simply because there's not a lot of record labels anymore. When I was at DVE back, it was there from 88 to 2005, 2004, and then did some other stuff for them. But when I was the music director, my whole job all day was fielding calls from record labels and grabbing CDs that came to me and listening to them. And, you'd get a write-up on somebody and, hey, this song's getting airplay at this station in Chicago and LA and blah, blah, blah. And, I'd listen to it and, and then my boss, who's a program director, and I would sit down and listen to some stuff, and record rep would come in and say, hey, this is the new record. What do you think? Do you think we can get some airplay? That type of stuff. And I don't think that happens anymore.
Okay.
I don't believe it does, because I don't really know how many bands anymore are on a legit record label, or are they doing it themselves?
What are the legit record labels anymore? Sony, I would guess, right? Sony, or some branch of Sony.
I think probably Warner Brothers, maybe. Perhaps. I don't know if Geffen's still around. I don't know. I'm kind of out of that realm of the business.
Is there just not enough money, do you think, in it for have that architecture where there's a record executives and advanced people and all this stuff that are out touching and massaging every radio station across the country and interacting? Is that whole architecture gone? Or is everything done now by computer?
I'm guessing it is. I don't know. I honestly don't know if
so a record company person wouldn't walk in.
Still probably call, but whether they come in and meet, I think, there's not a lot of meet and greets anymore with bands, because bands are making money doing their VIP packages.
Got it.
So I don't necessarily that cuts out the middleman for the record label guy doing his job, because when let's, for example, we're playing a couple tracks off the old Aerosmith Get a Grip album, let's say, and a record label would say, you guys want to do something with them? And I'm like, yeah, let me come up with a promotion. And we would do some kind of fun promotion with them or whatever. And then that was my job to take the winners, whatever they had to do between myself and the promotions director. We would make sure they did what they were supposed to do. And if they got to meet, part of the package was meeting the band, then I would work with the record label. Okay, here's where you need to be, blah, blah, blah. Here's your passes. Make sure your winners get in. And that was my job, to escort them backstage to meet the band and make sure that the record label knew that we were there. And that was his job, to be sure that Aerosmith had time with our winners since we did this big promotion. Now, though, everybody does these VIP experiences.
Right.
And it's their money. I mean, there's no middleman and things. And I think that's why some of these have gotten so outrageously expensive to do these VIP packages. Kisses is really expensive.
Yeah. And I was kind of around when that first kind of happened.
Right.
Like 2009, the Sonic Boom Tour, there was this meet and greet experience. And at that time, I was like, $500.
Right.
Which is now like $2,500.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing the potential there.
Sure. And they control it. It's their money. And there's different layers of that. You can do a VIP experience where, you just go and see a sound check. The next one is a VIP experience where you get the sound check and you get a swag bag full of some stuff and maybe an autographed CD or a poster or something like that. Then there's the meet and greets. And I've done a couple. I've paid for a couple. I've done Toto. And Toto's was fabulous. It was very inexpensive. And you got to hang out and watch just the group of people. You got to hang out and see the band do a sound check, and they would say, "Hey, anybody got a question about something?" And I'd say, "Yeah, there was a song you guys had. How come it never was a hit?" And they'd start playing it.
It's amazing.
Or Steve Porcaro would start playing Pretty Young Thing from Michael Jackson because he wrote it, or whatever. And just a really cool experience. And then you had great seats to the show. You got to meet the band. They gave you a swag bag. It was really a little bit of everything.
Worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then there's those like Bon Jovi that I know were outrageously expensive, and you never got to meet John Bon Jovi.
Right.
You never got to meet the band. It's like, what's the point?
Right.
What's the point?
Right.
Right. Are you kind of slapping your fans across the face that, hey, write out a check for $1,200 and I'll take your money, but you're not going to get to meet me. I don't understand that. I don't know if he still does that. That was years ago.
Yeah, it's a lot of money. It's definitely a lot of money. At least I always thought Kiss was expensive, but I mean, you get to go stand with the band, get your picture taken. You get to go to an acoustic show. It was private ahead. There was some intrinsic value.
Oh, absolutely.
Value's all
and there's a lot of artists that do that do have. They're not expensive, and it just depends on who you really like. And I mean, I've been blessed that I've been in this business long enough that I've met so many bands and famous people and stuff like that, and I didn't have to shell out money for that, but I have on occasion on a couple of people because I'm fans.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's just for a lot of people it's their hard-earned money, and at least let them meet you and get a photo taken with you.
I think so.
I don't know if he still does that or not. I'm not sure, but I just thought that was kind of like, is that right? I mean,
it's a lot of money, and I'm all for capitalism. If they want to, and of course now they're probably not getting big record deals and things, but
sure,
they got to find other revenue streams.
Right. Get it. This was something that somebody came up with.
Sure.
And every band does it. So going back to the record labels, you really don't need these people. And a lot of these bands have figured out, hey, we can kind of do this on our own. Or try to do it on their own. If they're, there's a lot of logistics to touring and things of that nature, but that the record label kind of helps with the money in that department. But, I mean, name 5 bands that you love that are touring that you like. You figure you spend $1,000 for that's $5,000. And
that's on the low
end.
I
mean, we're talking low end. Absolutely.
Low end. Plus the tickets. Sometimes the tickets aren't included in the meet and greets.
Correct. Yes.
And, for my little niche of the world, too, I knew that things were going to change when Kiss was selling guitars as part of the meet and greet. You could do the meet and greet, and you could also buy a signed guitar, where the artists were starting to believe, hey, I can sell these instruments and make X amount of dollars on my own.
Let's be honest. Gene and Paul are the premier promotional people.
You don't say.
I mean, you've seen Gene's house with all the stuff that they sell, or they had, or they have sold in the past.
Everything.
Yeah, but I mean, it's genius. I mean, if people are going to spend money on it, and I remember years ago when the Pirates were in the playoffs, a long time ago, if you remember that, there was a guy that I saw that had, it was Kiss dressed as the Pirates, and they had baseball bats and stuff, and I took a picture of his shirt.
Yeah.
And I put it on Twitter. I was new to Twitter, and I tagged Gene Simmons. I'd never done this before, and Gene Simmons immediately responded. And I was like, "Oh, you better hide this shirt. Gene Simmons will be after you for monetary value or something like that, something silly." And he replied back, he goes, "Don't you worry your sweet head, darling. We have a deal with Major League Baseball." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh, really?" But, more power to them.
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is they took it upon themselves to make money off of their brand. I mean, how can you look negatively about it? If someone's willing to pay it, and you are giving them something and they're giving something intrinsic which they believe is valuable.
Right. I mean, they've never changed their logo.
That's brilliant. Brilliant.
Doing the whole thing that they did without the makeup for a while, and then going back to it, and they kind of grabbed, I think, a whole new group of fans by doing that. You can't fault them for that. I mean, that's genius. And I mean, really, isn't a lot of what being a rock star is supposed to be is money? I mean,
it's part of it.
A lot of people, yes, get into the business because they love it, but eventually, if they become popular, it does become about the money.
I think so. I think as Stanley would say, there was three things. There was the drugs, there was the money, and there was the women. Because I left the drugs out, and I just took the other two.
Right.
And that worked for him.
Right.
And that's how I think he's able to survive this long doing it.
Sure.
But the other thing I always took from him, too, was that he used to say all the time when someone would give him a compliment, he goes, "Oh, this is my job." And he would just blow it off. But that's what he would always say. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. That's just not a canned answer. I mean, this is like his job is to be Paul Stanley. Yeah, his job is to be when he's on.
Yeah.
In meet and greets and signings or when he meets fans, he has to be on. That's a flipping job.
Yeah.
And he takes it that way. It's really kind of odd to me. I noticed that later in his career. Like it was actually a job.
It's kind of sad. Is it a job that you're just doing it because you're making money out of it, or
I think he likes it.
Do you still enjoy doing what you're doing? When it becomes when what your passion, to me, when your passion becomes a job, maybe it's time to get out.
Maybe. The money must be so good, though.
Oh my God!
That's my
Kiss.
That's my guess. The money must be so. The other thing too, though, I want to ask you this. I have this theory about aging rock stars and why they just can't give it up. I think it goes beyond money. Now, some of them blow all their money and they need this money later in life. No question.
Sure.
But I think it's that flippin' adulation thing. I think it's getting on stage and having command over these people, right? You could almost tell them to go kill, and they would just go do it. I mean, it's just crazy adulation.
Oh, there's
that's hard to give up.
Ego.
That's
absolutely.
Hard to give up.
Ego.
I think Gene Simmons, that's going to be the biggest thing for him. The hardest thing for him, I think, is going to be giving up that adulation.
Yeah.
That power, that presence, right?
People always telling you you're fabulous and you're great and this, that, and the other. I mean, that's got to blow up your head, I would think. For a lot of people. And there's those people that are down to earth and, are down to earth and are honest with people. It's like, oh, yeah, hey, that's nice. But, there's other people out there that are doing far better things than I am. There's people, helping people and doing this. And I realize music is something that helps so many people on so many different levels. If you're upset, if you're angry, if you're going through bad times. I mean, music has gotten all of us through a lot of terrible things. The pandemic, 9/11, I mean, all of us found comfort in music and I'm willing to pay the price for that if it makes me feel better. You know what I mean? Like to support an artist or to go see them or whatever if somebody's music speaks to me. And a lot of it does.
I think people should be remunerated for their efforts. I'm not saying I should set the bar for all of that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with someone putting their offering out for a price if someone values that.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
You shouldn't take commerce out of art.
Right.
It's crazy to think that that's there would be no art.
Right.
Or very little art.
Right.
Right?
Right. And I mean, art is subjective to a lot of people. I mean, you look at a painting and you see something and I see something like, oh, gosh, that's ugly, whatever.
She's looking around the room pretty quickly.
I'm not. Yeah, they're all photos.
There's a few in here.
Okay, that one looks like it's from something like
Scary.
Twilight Zone or something.
Scary,
like it's going to come alive and kill me.
That's a
or
Paul
something.
Stanley painting right there.
Oh, really? That's nice.
a little scary.
It is a little scary. But I mean,
it looks like Scott Ian of Anthrax, doesn't it?
It does. But art is subjective to certain people. Music is subjective. Like you said about like going and seeing Depeche Mode. You didn't get it. But, for a lot of other people, it's, their music speaks to them and it makes them feel good and makes them happy, it's just, it is, music is a universal language, I think. Maybe not for every band, for every fan, but for those people that the music speaks to, I think it is.
It certainly is, and it certainly is part of the human condition. People can deny it all they want, but I mean, why does it take up so much of our society? Because people are connected to it.
I'm sad for the people that, like, I'll mention, I went and saw Elton John, or maybe not Elton John, but maybe somebody
tomorrow night.
Maybe something a little less
popular.
Yeah. I'm a big Kicks fan. Okay. So I
Harrisburg,
say,
PA.
Yeah. So I hey, I saw Kicks. Who? And I'm like, you don't know them now. And I say, well, I'm going to see, the Doobie Brothers. Who are the Doobie Brothers? I'm like, how about Ringo Starr? Who's Ringo Starr? I'm like,
God.
And it's just like, Beatle?
They're out there.
Oh, I've heard the Beatles, but I don't know the names of the Beatles.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, really? You don't know the name of the Beatles and you're like in your 40s? I'm like, what do you like? How do you live your life? I don't understand people that are obsessed of music like I am. I guess that's kind of weird, but then they're obsessed with something else, and working out or whatever, and that's fine. But I always think like, wow, what do you listen to when you're sad? Like, what do you listen to when you need some motivation to go tell your boss you want a raise? You need a little, Rocky music to get you pumped up or whatever, anything. But it's,
I've met a couple people like that are not touched by it. It's kind of background noise for them.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing.
It's weird to me. Because music is my life. I mean, everything I do. I wouldn't have met my husband if it wasn't for music. I wouldn't have had the job I have for this long if it wasn't for my love of music and just dumb stuff. I mean, theme songs on television and all that stuff. I mean, but I just don't understand how could you miss all that? Like, how can you go through your life and not be aware of the names of the Beatles? Probably the one band that influenced just about everybody in music right now,
I met a guy once who didn't know who Mick Jagger was. Oh. Not that he was even a Rolling Stone, didn't even know, the name did nothing to him. And I said, I didn't want to make fun of the guy and the conversation, didn't want to ruin the conversation, but he did not know who Mick Jagger was.
Of course.
He did not know who Mick Jagger was.
Wow. Again, you don't know the names of the Beatles?
I mean, that's insane to me.
I mean, when John Lennon was killed, I was in college and my roommate came in. It happened Monday night. This was Tuesday morning. I had late classes, so I slept in. And she came into our dorm room and was like, hey, she goes, did you hear the news? I'm like, no. And she says, one of the Beatles was killed. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, what do you look like? Blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I don't know. He had kind of longer hair. Paul McCartney? And she's like, no. And I'm like, Ringo Starr, George Harrison, John Lennon? And she was like, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? It's the Beatles. Come on, And I got dressed and ran down to the we only had a TV in the lobby, and everybody was glued to what was going on. I was like, oh gosh, that's terrible, But
81, right?
Yep.
Man,
80, December of 80.
Whatever happened to his son? His son was pretty talented, if I remember correctly. Julian? Yeah.
He's still putting music out.
He had that hit album there.
Velotte came out in 84.
Yeah, there was a thing there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he looked like him. He sounded like him.
Hauntingly.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, he's still playing music and he just did, I think he just redid Imagine not too long ago.
Okay.
Yeah, coming out of the pandemic. And it was very pretty. Very pretty.
Have you heard anything on the rumblings that lately it's kind of somewhat that the 3 surviving members of Zeppelin are kind of thinking about getting together?
Wow, wouldn't that be spectacular?
Do you think they can do it?
I don't know. Well,
JP can do it, for sure.
Yeah.
With his hands tied behind his back, probably.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is, again, we go back to the singers. I think back to when Led Zeppelin got into the Kennedy Center Honors, and Ann Wilson.
Watched that dozens of times.
And Nancy Wilson out there singing Stairway to Heaven. And it broke my heart because Robert Plant looked like he was crying. I mean, he was trying to be kind of not showing it, but, you know, and what's going through his head at that point? Is it just because the music was so fabulous, it was such a great time in his life? Is it because, you know, nostalgia over, you know, we were young, wow, we did a lot of crazy things, great music? Or is it because I'm getting older, I can't do that anymore? Or I don't know. That would be fabulous.
The person who enjoyed that the most, I think, was Jimmy Page. When I looked at like his reaction to that, he was like,
and John Paul Jones was,
and JP, but Page was like into it. Like he was like, I mean, to see Page smile that much consistently over like a 5-minute period was just unheard of.
Right.
It
made me sad to watch Robert Plant's.
He's been the stickler. The other 2 want to do it, and they've wanted to do it for a while. But Page,
he's out
Plant's
touring
been the
with
stickler.
Alison Krauss, so he's still. It's not like he's not interested in singing anymore. He's still singing, so that's at least something good. I would love to see the Talking Heads get back together, and I'd like to see REM do a tour together. All of them are alive.
Yeah.
Talking Heads don't really get along all that great.
No, they do not.
David Byrne kind of messed that up.
No one gets along with him.
Exactly. If you read Chris France's book, you'll see why. And then, you know, REM, I don't think there's any issues them, you know, personally not getting along, but I just think that
they've been real quiet. Stipe's been very quiet.
Yeah, they kind of just did their own thing. They've done their own thing, but it's just like, you know, gosh, can you do one more? Even if you did a handful of dates across the United States, do a couple nights in New York, do a night in Boston, Chicago, Florida.
Film it.
Yeah. Or just do a 10 dates across the United States and let your fans travel to see it, you know?
Right. They'll do it. They'll do it. What about the Who? Where they're still a thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they always talk about this is our last time, and it's not their last time.
Well, look at Elton John. This is, I think, his...
I don't know what to expect tomorrow.
Is this his 4th appearance for the farewell tour? I saw it the last time, and I'm going tomorrow night.
I'm not actually convinced it's going to happen tomorrow. And the reason I say that, well, is because the Queen died, you see. And then I think the Queen's funeral was Monday.
Yeah.
But is Elton going to be part of that?
Elton John, come on. He has a private jet. He can blow out of here and be there lickety-split. Come on.
I don't know. Until it happens, I'm doubtful.
Wow.
I am.
Wow. I am shocked.
Let me ask you
I
this
honestly
question.
didn't even think of... I've thought about a lot of bands who, you know, are British and all that stuff. And, I mean, you know, you think that when Diana died, you know, he changed Candle in the Wind for her. But I don't know. And he did play her Jubilee, too. So, now, don't you dare. Don't you dare. Yeah, so we'll see.
I think the Pistols should play it myself. But
oh, my. Wow.
That was interesting. Did you see any of the lots of celebrities that were talking about? Did you see any of the comments from the Pistols?
I did not.
So, ironically, the singer of the band took the high road and said, hey, send her victorious, and posted the undocumented photo that they used on an album cover,
right.
Just a regular photo.
Right.
And they said, you know, we are sending her best to their family or whatever. And the rest of the members were pretty snide and ignorant about it. So
really?
What you thought would
happen
I'll have to go back
and
flipped around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
it's very interesting.
Johnny's maybe taking the high road, and
maybe
with, you know, getting older, you know, just realizes, okay, you know, let's can't be a jerk our whole entire lives. Although, like I've mentioned on the show before, I interviewed him, and I was absolutely I've never been more terrified to interview anybody but Johnny Lydon, and that is the honest to God's truth. And he was a complete gentleman. He was so nice to me and so kind, and he was a really good guy. And I was kind of upset with myself, not upset with myself, but like, come on, what was wrong with me?
Now, was this by telephone or was this in person?
By phone. By phone.
Now, was he coming in for a show?
Yeah. Pill had just released an album.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever work any of the Public Image shows in town when they were in?
Have I been there? Yeah.
I mean, okay.
I didn't meet him though.
Okay.
No. Just I've only had a dealing with him over the phone.
I just thought that was interesting about the Queen, because I mean they're so indelibly connected with her pop culture. Yeah, but it was just interesting to see what their reactions were.
I'll have to go back and
it wasn't what I expected.
Yeah,
did you have a good time, my friend?
I did, as always.
What
year we can talk about the next time?
I'm thinking I want to do late '80s because that was a weird time.
Yeah, it
was. This grunge thing, kind of alternative, kind of.
Yeah.
We can do the late '80s going into the '90s.
Well, really, when you look at it. Hair bands were huge, like 86, 87, 88.
Oh yeah, for sure,
the alternative stuff was big, and then grunge kind of happened early 90s. So you kind of, some of them were still doing that, but that was like that was kind of like a 1981, like I mentioned earlier, where it was a lot of weird stuff on the radio.
How would you classify, before we scoot, like the Stone Temple Pilots? Like, what would you say? Because I never looked at them as a grunge band, right? They were like a chameleon. Every song was different on a record. It was like,
I think coming out of that area, just get tagged with that,
Okay. They were a hell of a band. I mean,
oh my gosh, they were fabulous.
Coming out of the 90s, they were probably, to me, one of the best and most complex rock bands that were out there then.
Right.
But that wasn't grunge to me.
It's just like, there's a lot of the bands that got, kind of thrown into the hair metal. Were they really hair metal? No, I don't think so. I don't really think Cinderella was. I thought Cinderella was a straight ahead rock band. But in order to fit in or get notoriety or whatever, they did the hair and all that stuff, I think. There's certain bands like that. Tesla kind of got thrown into that as well.
No question.
And Tesla is not even anything close to a hair band.
They were the first band to do an actual acoustic thing and made it successful. Right. Before MTV Unplugged.
Well, Bon Jovi did it too. Bon Jovi did his thing.
That's right.
But Tesla, Kix. I don't think Kix is a hair metal band. I think they're more of like the Ramones and AC/DC. I think, in my opinion, but it depends on when you came out, and sometimes you just got lumped into that stuff.
For sure. Well, we'll hit the late 80s.
Yeah, sounds
next
good.
Time. Thank you, my friend.
You're welcome.
All right, friends. Cris Winter, and they can reach you at
Cris Winter Radio. That's CRIS Winter, just like the season. Radio on Facebook, and I'm at Cris Winter 412 on Instagram and on Twitter.
Look her up. You'll be disappointed.
It's all nostalgia stuff. It's this stuff we're talking about. It's memories.
It's do this forever.
It's all kinds of weird things about TV and really pop culture is what I do. That. No politics. I swear to God, no politics.
We don't do that in the show. Thank you, friends.
Take care.